Hey everyone, Nick Engvall here. Before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you about some of the people that make the sneaker history community and this podcast possible. It's more important than ever to think about who you give your money to when you're buying clothing to go with your kicks. Our friends at Guilty Goods started their brand with a goal of giving back, especially to the communities that make sneaker culture possible. With every purchase from Guilty Goods, at least 10% of the proceeds are donated to organizations like Big Brothers and Big Sisters, the Susan G. Komen Foundation, the Movement for Black Lives, and many more. You can save 30% on your order by using the code HISTORY at guiltygoods.us. Again, that's history at guiltygoods.us for 30% off, and you can feel good about your purchase knowing you're supporting a meaningful cause. Sneakers are all about presentation, and if you're like me, displaying your kicks at home or in the office is just as important as when they're on your feet. Sneaker Throne makes sneaker display cases featuring customizable LED lights, drop-side cases to showcase the entire side of the shoe, not just the heel or the toe, the whole shoe. They've also got display cases for trading card collectors and hat collectors. To me, it's the perfect way to display your collection. You can save at least 10% on your Sneaker Throne order by using the code HISTORY at sneakerthrone.com. That's history at sneakerthrone.com. If you're a Patreon supporter or a member of our Discord community, you already know about Kicks with V hot sauce and his small batch, locally sourced hot sauce. V has been one of the biggest supporters of sneaker history and the podcast since the early days. He's currently the defending champion in our community trivia nights competition. Kicks with V hot sauce has been a huge hit with the community. You can save 10% on your order by using the code SneakerHistory10 at kickswithvhots.com. That's SneakerHistory10 at kickswithvhots.com. Now, you're probably here because you like sneakers, and if you join the Discord, you know our community is about so much more than that. Whether it's the marathon-like community calls, trivia night debates, the in-person meetups, or just sharing our favorite experiences, we found that although we have such different backgrounds, we all have some unexpected shared passions. Not only does the entire community look out for each other when it comes to releases, we're like a support group for life in general. You can join the Discord community for free by heading to the show notes of this episode. After you're done listening to this episode, tell someone you like their kicks today. You never know how far a simple compliment can take you, and we all know how good it feels to have someone show their appreciation. Now let's get into today's episode. What up, what up? Welcome back to the Sneaker History Podcast. Hey, before we get into this episode, I wanted to tell you about a couple of our partners. These are some of the folks that help us keep the podcast going, and they've been nice enough to offer some exclusive discounts for our listeners. Now, if you've watched us on YouTube, you all know how we love to display our kicks when we're not rocking them. Sneaker Throne makes sneaker display cases featuring customizable LED lights, drop-side cases to showcase your entire shoe, not just the heel, not just the toe, shoe trees, a number of other sneaker-related accessories. You can save 10% on your Sneaker Throne order by using the code HISTORY. You can find a link to Sneaker Throne in the description, or you can just head to sneakerhistory.com/sneakerthrone and it will send you directly to their site. Again, that's 10% off with the code HISTORY. Our friends at Prospect are the premier streetwear brand and sneaker boutique based in sunny San Diego, California. One of my favorite places. Prospect is not your typical hypebeast haven, though. They carry classic footwear from brands like Asics, New Balance, Puma, Saucony, as well as local and globally known streetwear brands like Belief, Illust, Rottweiler, Stussy, and many others. Not to mention their own Prospect label and the iconic Just a Kid from Dago collection. If you're a listener of the podcast, you can save 10% on all of your orders from Prospect through their website with the code HISTORY10. That's promo code HISTORY10 at prspctsd.com. If you or someone you know is interested in sponsoring the podcast or becoming a partner with our community, get in touch with us. You can reach us by email at podcast@sneakerhistory.com, and we'll get back to you with information about how we can partner. And now for today's episode.
Jordan trying to shake off Starks. Oh, what a move!
LeBron James with no regard for human life. Final seconds. Bryant for the win. Iverson against Gill. The crowd on its feet. Allen for the win.
Welcome to the Sneaker History Podcast.
Hey, what is good, everybody? My name is Nick Engvall. Going to catch up with one of my good friends in this whole sneaker thing. And just to give you a little background on how long I have been a fan of this individual, I had to look it up. So I pulled it up here on my computer. I wrote about what Gary here does on September 14th of 2011 on my personal blog. Because when I saw what he was doing, I was like, this shit is amazing. I need to talk about this. So Gary, Freehand Profit, what's good, man? How you doing?
Nick, so good to see you, brother. Like you said, man, we go way back. I don't like to throw OG out there lightly, but I think at this point, man, that's what we're doing here. We've been around the block a few times, but it's always good to see a familiar face, man.
Yeah, likewise, man. Likewise. It's been a crazy year and a half. And I just think that the podcast for me has been like, I don't know, it's like the smallest form of keeping just a little bit of a finger on the pulse and keeping in touch with people. And now I'm like, like, can I, obviously we're recording remotely, but like, I'm ready to do this in person, man. Like, I'm ready to like, let's go grab some food and kick it and like get back into like feeling good about things. Cause I feel like we're all on the verge of like, like that next thing, right? Like, what is that next, just like huge thing that gets us going? Cause we're all looking for it. So I think it's going to be, it's been a rough time, but I think we're all kind of like super optimistic. And I know you are pretty excited about your future. So I guess like, let's give like a quick background on who you are for those that don't know you.
So my name's Gary Lockwood, but better known as Freehand Profit. And for the last decade, actually, I've been dissecting, destroying, chopping up highly coveted sneakers and making one-of-a-kind masks, often gas masks, from these as a form of art, sculpture, and photography combined.
Yeah, man. So like the one that caught me was that Stormtrooper. I didn't actually think about one, I'm just a Star Wars fan. I wasn't actually thinking I wear the Stormtrooper shirt, but like now that I'm looking at it, I realize it
makes sense. Right?
So how did you first, kind of like even start with a mask and sneakers, right?
So the idea came about during a year-long daily project called Mask 365, and that was inspired by Noah Scalen's Skull a Day project. And this was back in the day of blogs, which are fairly different than what we knew. But so every day for that year, I would make or design a mask and put it up on my blog. And I was really exploring different materials. Really drawn to gas masks, but, I've been an artist since a kid, but I was a two-dimensional artist, drawing, painting. But you can't really paint on a gas mask. Like, I could paint on a lot of things, but it just peels or flakes off of that latex or rubber. So I had to find new ways and new materials. And a friend's mom was throwing out a old handbag that the lining was deteriorating. I said, well, if you're going to throw that out, I'm going to cut it up and I'll make something out of it. And I wrapped it around this gas mask, and I loved the process and I loved the results, but I don't love handbags. I don't know anything about handbags. That was just like an opportunity. So I thought about it and I looked for quality leathers and interesting color combinations and dope branding, and oh, well, man, my sneakers got all of that. So, I started small. I picked up, these SB Blazers from a Nike outlet in Vero Beach. The green Sparks, got 2 pairs, $20 a pair. And, that one to rock, one to stock became one to chop, one to rock. With the goal of always trying to make the mask out of one pair of those sneakers so that the other pair could be on my feet for the photo shoot. And like, that was my way of showing where it came from to where it could go. And, there's so many different factors to the process that kept me coming back to it, whether it's it's tied to hip hop which has always been my biggest inspiration. And the way that shows through is not only through the sneakers, which is why I'm into sneakers. Kicks have always been like a staple of hip hop culture, whether it's your shell toes, your Cortez, your Air Force Ones, Timberlands, and those were the era that, obviously reflected, where we, grew up. But all that being said, the process itself is also a reflection of hip hop. The way a DJ or producer will sample a record is the way I sample a sneaker. the way a graffiti artist rearranges the alphabet in letter forms is the way I twist and move the sneaker parts. So all of that, is for me the reflection of the art form that inspired me. With that said, the gas mask is the other symbol that I play with most often, and that reflects, the ills of the world, the environmental destruction, being a world at war, the civil unrest. It's also a symbol of protection. So, for me personally, the gas mask is kind of like this wish that I had a way to filter out all the negative shit that was surrounding me and choking me on some days. So that combined with the sneakers is for me, again, tying into what I love about hip hop, which is it's the combination of the fly and the flashy, and also the knowledge and the consciousness and speaking to change and revolution. So that's probably
that's great.
A bit more of an answer than you were expecting, but sometimes you crack that Pandora's box open.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because hip hop is that for me, right? I mean, just music in general, right? I might have mentioned this on a previous episode, but I was a big Rage Against the Machine fan, right?
Yes, sir.
So much about emotional music, let's say, or elevated music is the consciousness. Doesn't matter if it comes in Rage Against the Machine form or Public Enemy form. It's the consciousness that I relate to, right?
Yeah.
And so Rage announcing that they're coming back for Coachella and all that before the pandemic, it was like, okay, I never got to see them. My old ass is going to be out there in a mosh pit, and hopefully I survive. But I started going back into it, so I've been listening to a lot, which also is an insight into how life has been for the last year or two. But I was talking to my girlfriend about it, and she was kind of like, so was it in you first, or was it listening to them? How did that work, right? Because so that sent me down a whole kind of rabbit hole of music around the early 90s. And that first Rage album came out in, I think, 92. And for me, that's right at the beginning of high school, and all sorts of parental challenges, I will say, me trying to say hey, I want to be my own person. But it's just a really interesting kind of, it's beautiful to hear you say it like that, because it's so, it makes so much more sense even to me, who's known you and known what you do. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. Did you, when you first started, the mask or the gas mask, even the functionality of it, were you thinking that all along? Was that always something you were just I'm going to make this functional too? Or was it something you've toyed with?
It was, I feel like it's kind of always in the back of the mind. And I think the work helped me examine and better put words to why I was drawn to the icon of the gas mask, the symbolism of sneakers, what they meant to me as part of my identity. And I think that's also why the work is so personal to me. The gas mask is not just everything that we talked about, but it's also, in ways, it's a tribute to my dad, who I got my do-it-yourself nature from. I had, while other kids had, store-bought, army costumes or knights, and I had a wood shield with a leather belt on the back of it that we painted, and I had this army surplus gas mask. And then later when I got into graffiti, obviously respirators and all of that became very symbolic and very literal at the same time of trying to protect my lungs. So I think it was all there, but I maybe didn't understand it until I, did it 200 sometimes, you know,
Yeah.
like, and I think that's what keeps me coming back to the work, is that there's still so many stories to tell, so many things to explore, understand, and express through the work. At that same time, there's so many other things that I'm also capable of. And so like the work now is also about pushing past being the mask guy, which is I guess maybe ironic that like in a masked world, the mask guy, like at the start of the pandemic, I'm not going to lie, I wasn't happy about it, but I was like, okay, at least now my work is more relevant than ever. Like maybe folks will understand like why a mask is so important. But and it kind of did. Like I don't get the question that I got for the first 10 years of why masks. Nobody asks me that anymore. Like, but we're so fatigued from wearing masks, whether you're pro-mask or anti-mask. And I'm pro-mask myself, but even I'm like, you know what? Don't say mask right now. I don't want to do it. I just took mine off.
Just let me breathe the air again.
Yeah, exactly. Let my ears calm down a little bit. For me, it was the beard dent. That was the thing that like really was the most frustrating thing, is that like, big beautiful beard with just this ugly mask dent in it every time I took it off. So like I wore mask steady, you know, because hey, look, it's better this way. But yeah, it's been really tough since COVID hit, and I've had to pivot quite a number of times, because I think people have been a little bit adverse to masks, and brands don't like it, muddies the waters. Like pre-COVID, I was just the weird mask guy, but post-COVID, it's like, oh, are these virus protection? Is this like, you know, people get more confused instead of less. So, you know, there's some change on the way. I'll say that, and not to say that I'm leaving masks behind. But it's crossed my mind. I might, you know, again, you know, came from Mask 365. So part of me thinks that I should just have 365 masks. I'm at 210. So that leaves me a good 150 to really show out and do a grand finale.
Yeah.
But, you know, we'll see. I haven't planned that far ahead. Like everything I feel like that I've done in my career has been fairly organic. I know, I don't know how exactly to describe that. It's not that, I don't go out and get it. That you know, you have to be a go-getter, but, I guess not overreaching or paying better attention to personal growth and allowing that growth and the work to kind of speak for itself. Like I don't necessarily like to say that, because you really do, like, so much of being an artist these days is marketing and promotion.
Yeah.
And I fight that, because I don't think that's the way it should be. Even though I know that's how it is, doesn't mean I have to adapt and accept that. So maybe to my own detriment, in the fact that like I probably should spend more time figuring out Discord and TikTok and all these other like new ways to connect with the community. But like, as you know, as a patron, I try to put that energy there. And like, also most of my audience is on Instagram. So whether or not the algorithm is working in my favor or not, you know, most of the audience probably won't see it, but I got to put it up there for them to see if they come looking.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that whole ramble was a bit confusing, but I think that's a good slice of the reality of it. It's like, we're just constantly spinning around trying to make sense of a new world and where we fit into it and how we fit into it and how we survive it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's, that's such an ongoing conversation for myself. And, I can totally relate. On one hand, I'm not a self-promotion guy at all. Right. Like, I mean, I'd much rather be the guy behind the scenes, putting people together and letting the cool people do everything. Like, yeah, I want to hang out with all the cool people, but like, I mean, even just putting my face on camera over the last year or two is like so new to me. So it's like, I'm doing it intentionally to push myself beyond my comfort zone. And, slowly but surely I'm getting more comfortable with it. I have all these little weird speech things that I hear and I'm like, oh, that's much better than it was a year ago, right?
Practice is everything, and regularity.
But yeah, it really is. But how do you navigate that as an artist? Do you have a manager? Do you just
I did
down that path? And like, how do you decide to
I
do
had
that?
a manager for about, I want to say about a year. It might have been a little bit more, a little bit less. And in some scenarios, it was a huge help. One thing that I did learn from that is that it's very important, the relationships that we build. And while sometimes it's nice to have a filter between you and a client or a collector, that filter also means that there's a barrier. So whereas I get to play nice and let the manager say, hey, we need that payment right now, and that doesn't cause any animosity, it also doesn't build a bridge between me and that person where like they got one-on-one time with me. And my most devoted collectors and long-standing clients are folks that like really had that one-on-one, relationship, like the ones that came into our home, and saw the work and saw me, doing the work. Those are the people that are still supportive, 8-9 years later. Whereas the folks that like I made work for in that year and a half with the manager, they didn't get that one-on-one time. So I don't even know who to reach out to in the sense like, I have a show coming up in November at SCAD Fash in Atlanta. And we're gathering up as many masks as we can from the last 10 years for display. And certain ones I'm just having a hell of a time tracking down because they were done for brand work. And I no longer have an email because that person's moved on to a different company. Or, it was through an ad agency and they no longer work with that brand. Maybe that brand got those masks and decided to send them off to, as Christmas gifts for so-and-so, or they're in the wind. So it's a trip. It's a trip.
So that's kind of interesting. I didn't really think about this before, but what's that like? I mean, just because sneakers kind of is like the talking point in the middle of all this, but like, it's almost like we were talking about before we're recording about like when you pick and choose when to let something go that, may have served its purpose, or maybe you just lost interest in. How do you do that with masks, right? Like, I mean, I'm sure at some point you've put so much work into something and it's like, okay, the final piece and that crescendo of getting to that point has to be something that you're like probably fairly attached to, I would assume. I mean, I'm not, creative in that way. So I can't really, I'm trying to think of ways that it applies to me, but it's not there. But like, it's got to be like, okay, well, these are kind of my kids in a sense, right? Like, like I put so much into this. What's that like for you? And like, how do you kind of, or maybe even like the first time, you let one go or sold one, and then how does that play into how you think about them now?
Sure. The thing about the collectors is they're about as different as the masks. And so there's so many different types of relationships that are formed, either with me and the client or me and the mask. And, you know, there's collectors who come to me with a sneaker and they say, I want you to make a mask out of this. Or what would you do with these? And, you know, for example, the Dornbecker 5 mask, which I turned into an anglerfish. That was a collector who brought me the DB5s and said, what would you do with these? And I was like, oh, okay, here we go. Like, I really want to work with these, but I'm not normally a patent leather guy. So what comes to mind when I think about that? And like, I pitched a xenomorph, and he wasn't really from Aliens. He wasn't feeling that. Mm-hmm. Luckily, I actually have one of those in the works out of 11 Lab 4s, so just hold on a little bit longer. But I told him, I was like, look, I kind of see an anglerfish, man. I was like, I thought that was a total wild card. I was like, there's no way someone's going to sacrifice their Dornbecker 5s and pay me thousands of dollars in order to make them an anglerfish mask. And he agreed, and thank God, because to me, that's one of my best pieces. Like, I have a hard time topping that because, like, there's so many things that just worked out so well on that piece. So that's one type of collector. That same collector, however, said, I want an Iron Man mask. And so he was like, what shoe would you make that Iron Man mask out of? I threw him a little bit of a curveball. I said, let's go with the 5 Lab 3s. Let's get both colorways. I'm gonna make a War Machine helmet and gauntlet. We'll photograph that. Then we're gonna send it off to Mosh. Mosh is gonna paint it in gold and red, and then we have Iron Man. So we kind of have two masks in one, and that's the way that one went. But then there's so many other, there's collectors that buy existing work, which I love, but they're far and few between. Which sucks because I want to take more chances with the work, and like I'm willing to take more chances than maybe collectors are. The safe bets for collectors are hype sneakers, because they know it's going to appreciate and get that wow factor. For me, I'm like, I know what those materials can do. So it's not just about the hype. There's so much other history or just interesting materials, interesting colorways that I want to work with or enjoy working with. And certain stories are told through different materials. So, a suede sneaker is going to bring different energy than, tumbled leather or, some of the newer, synthetic materials.
Yeah. It's crazy too, because I think like and maybe you could talk to the materials a little bit more in a sense, because in sneakers, right? Like, the older generation now that we are, kind of defaults to like, give me the good leather, give me the good suede,
right?
Maybe like the traditional mesh, maybe a little bit of nubuck,
right?
But like now, I think of like, I think like the, I forget the name of the LeBron 11. It's like that green color that you did.
King's Pride.
King's Pride. Yeah. Like when that shoe came out, I was like, okay, I think it's crazy looking, right? The shoe itself is just like, I love the LeBron 11.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's out there. It's so far beyond what you would expect from a basketball shoe.
Performance is shit, but design wise, it's gorgeous to me.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I think of that as like the material of like this weird, like, I don't know, foam. And like half the time it's like the newer stuff, to me, just because I'm more old school, I guess, like, I'm just like, hey, I don't need all that. But I'm also like fascinated to see people, as creatives, what they do with it and where they go with it.
Right.
So how do you, when you're thinking about the materials specifically, and like you referenced, like, something like with the suede or something, and giving that softer touch, softer feel, Is that something you're talking about with the customer and the client? Is it something that you're explaining to them as well in like what the finished product becomes?
It can be. It depends on, I guess, kind of what's being done. Like, I don't really have to explain, okay, well, tumble leather is going to do this and suede's going to do this, unless they're bringing me a shoe like, okay, so like the NMDs. When the NMDs were hot and I started making masks out of those, like, they have no structure. So I had to think of different ways to use those materials, whether it be like the balaclava mask that I made, where like, okay, well, if there's no structure, great. Like, let's make a ski mask, and like it can be more like a loose cloth mask. And I really enjoyed that. Other times it was about wrapping them around thermoplastics so they have a little bit more of a base and I can shape that way. Other times I would say the talk that I have to have more than anything else as far as materials go with, like, say, a custom collector would be, how much material that shoe is going to provide me. And if it's a material that I can't like substitute, like, okay, so I'm just wrapping up the Bugs Bunny 8 mask right now. And, when they dropped those gray suede 8s, I was like, oh, I kind of wanted a little bit of extra gray, because obviously Bugs has got a good chunk of gray on them, more so than the Bugs Bunny 8s do. But what I did instead was I sourced some gray suede, and that worked out much better because I was able to wrap the bunny ears, and like I could have done that with the gray 8s, but it would have been so much heavier, and it's a big mask already. Like, if you can imagine the ones that they'd walk around, I guess it's Warner Brothers, so it wouldn't be Disney World, but I feel like Six Flags would sometimes have those characters walking around.
Yeah.
So it's good size. And I actually just shot it on Monday, and I modeled it, and it was too much. Like, I gotta say, like, it was 10 minutes of shooting, take it off, rest for like 15, do it again. And I could only do 3 rounds. It was a lot. But I'm really looking forward to it because I went a little bit overboard making props and everything, for this mask. So like, there's carrot grenades. There's a carrot
Nice.
AK clip. There's a riot shield that I custom painted to say duck season. A Marvin the Martian skull. A revolver with like a bang flag. Like, I'm 3D rendering a giant Daffy Duck with like Gundam mech suit like in the background. So, and all of this is based on an illustration of a Bugs Bunny gas mask that I did during Mask 365 that a collector commissioned me to do a full body, because it was just the head. And he was like, design me a full body with him wearing the Bugs Bunny 8s, and like I want him holding the AK. It's like, all right, well, instead of a banana clip, I'm going to give him an AK clip. So this was like an illustration from like, I want to say 2013 era. A few years later, he commissioned the mask to actually be made. Now that I'm doing the 3D printing, I was able to really bring it to life and just have totally gone overboard. Like, because it's such a rich, like, I know this world of Looney Tunes. Like, if we're going to have some fun, like over the top is okay here. This is what it's done. So, it's really cool to have that coming out, and like, I guess we got a few days before Space Jam 2 drops. So, all things in their due time and at the right time. But, yeah, that totally off topic from your question, but
that's awesome, man. No, it's great though. Cause I mean, that kind of leads me to like what I wanted to kind of dig into next is like, there's the working with, clients and people and that kind of stuff. But like, what does the process look like for you from like the seed gets planted from whatever it is to like actual creation, because, you know, like knowing that you do the photography, you know, all the props, the set, I mean, you do like literally end to end the work on this stuff. And I think if I didn't know you, you know, I'd just assume, hey, yeah, you hire a photographer and do this stuff. Right. But like now, you know, people like, especially with like the 3D printing, like you're getting so,
I have way more control,
you know, full ownership of every step of the way. Right. So like, what's it like for you? Is it like, okay, cool, I'm going to, you know, you mentioned with bugs, right? It's like, here's this, you know, drawing you did, you know, years ago, but like, is it start with a drawing and, you know, then, you know, into the mask and then into the photo shoot? Or is it like, you know, like you mentioned Looney Tunes, right? It sounds like you just saw Looney Tunes and you're like, here's all these things in Looney Tunes popping up. And you were just like, well, I'm already in the world. So here I go.
they all have their own life. The most, I say the standard process is me taking a pair of shoes, deconstructing them, and with no plan, no drawing, I call them a freestyle, letting the character of those sneakers decide the character of that mask. A good example of that would be the Union Jordan 1 mask that I made. No plan, nothing in mind, just dive right in and use those materials. We talked about the anglerfish. That's one where the client didn't ask for a sketch. I'd say more often than not, a sketch is usually needed by the bigger brands who need a little bit of assurance that I'm going to deliver something that they can use. But say, for example, the Bugs Bunny or the Travis Scott mask, the Red October mask as well. Those do have a little bit more like early consideration and design in that sense. So that's made possible because of the 3D printing. So with the Red October Chi Lin, the Travis Scott Boar mask, and the Bugs Bunny mask, I was able to 3D model, usually using ZBrush, and then 3D print these bases for me to sculpt off of. And then it kind of just, it's such, we talked about opening Pandora's box, and that's where it kind of is with like a ripe project can be mined and pulled. I can go so much further with things, like the Bugs Bunny mask, because like in half a day, I have carrot grenade props that I designed and printed out real quick. No problem. Not only that, but those 3D models can be used later on in creating, whether it be an NFT, digital artwork like that, or toys and vinyl figures. And, you know, right now I actually am working on like one-of-a-kind action figures based on the Versace gas mask, the chain reaction gas mask. So I have that modeled out, and I have my own version of the chain reaction modeled and it'll be like 1/6 scale. And each time I'm going to be hand painting or you know, custom, you know, clothes, or because I'm going to have to build up to it. There's going to be a few, but what I want to get to is buying Versace garments to deconstruct to make action figure clothes for these like one-of-a-kind art action figures. Our bank account ain't built that way right now, so we got to work up. First one's just going to be with some, you know, all black and the custom sneakers and the mask. So that hopefully will give me an excuse to go blow a little bit of money at Versace. That's just not in my wheelhouse. I ain't got no business doing that at this point in my life. But for the work, it makes sense. So hey, look, let's do it. That was part of you know, kind of where working with sneakers as a material came for me. It was having my cake and eating it too. I was at a point in my life where I wanted to put more energy and effort into my art career, and I knew I had to stop spending money on things that I enjoyed, like sneakers, but I was like, what if sneakers were the art though? Like, how do I have my cake and eat it too? And here we are, like, especially now because so I'm transitioning from using these dead stock sneakers to make these masks because of course you don't really want used sneakers on your face. But now after, being such an advocate of wear your sneakers, I have shoes that I love that are not, that I want to make work from that aren't pristine. And so that's actually where the Sneaker Coyote is the first of that kind, where I chopped up a bunch of used Nike sneakers for myself and friends, and have kind of done this sneaker taxidermy to create this. I call it the Coyote because that's the easiest thing to say, but its actual name is Latin for the dog of flowers and air, because it was the idea behind it is this floral camouflage, which is what I love doing. I love combining floral designs and camouflage, and thought about how that would play into the animal kingdom. So I had this idea of this wild dog that would lure small prey like birds and butterflies into this, flowering field with like a tail that and face that mimic the flowers. So when it snatches something out of the air, the prey doesn't even see it coming. And now that's this Sneaker Coyote surrounded by flowers. I just shot that Monday along with the Bugs Bunny mask, and I'm really looking forward to getting it out there. I have some video editing work to do, which I hate, but got to do it. Video's king in 2021, so got to play the role sometimes.
Yeah, most definitely, man. That's another thing, I guess. Like, how do you balance? You mentioned NFTs and video, and like you've got the photo shoots, and you've got the actual like 3-dimensional work. You've got the
you asked how do I balance
the rendering aspect of it? Well, how do you even choose to navigate all those worlds, right? Because everything can be everything, I guess, is the kind of the mentality of what I see out there from a lot of people.
I wish I had a good answer for that. I don't think I do a good job of balancing at all. I was in the hospital a few weeks ago, as you know. So like, clearly I'm not doing that well at balancing everything. I am getting better at accepting, taking a step back and knowing that I can't be a part of everything. Like, there's so much to do, and the speed of technology right now is more than anyone can keep up with, at least for any given amount of time. If you're fresh, you can keep it up for a few years, but I've been around for 10 years. I've been doing that grind for 10 years. It is not sustainable. And eventually those burnout moments last longer and are harder to bounce back from. And it's not an easy lesson to learn. The hustle mentality, like if that's in you, it's not easy to take a step back. Like, I don't know how to not give it my all, except for the fact that if I know that if I keep doing that, I'm going to pretty much, it's going to cost me everything.
Yep.
So, I'm learning, and I think that's the best thing anybody can do is just try to be aware of how you're spending your energy and, do your best to prioritize self-care. I don't necessarily know how to do that. Like, especially when times are tough, like how do you relax or take a day off when you're not sure how the rent's going to get paid that month? I don't know how to do that. That's not in me. I have to learn how to do that. And you have to, I guess, just be considerate and deliberate with what you're learning. Because there are systems in place that will shape you if you just go with the flow of things. Just be mindful. Yoga and meditation has helped me. But yeah, I still don't have it figured out, man. And like, that's the thing that, like, you know, bringing up the NFT space. Oh, oops, sorry. Bringing up the NFT space, I see so many young creatives like getting this success, and like, I love seeing that. But what I hate seeing is the youthful hubris that it's always going to be that way, because it's not, and it's, like I said, it's not sustainable. So, you know, when we're getting that attention, when we're feeling that love, when the community is embracing us, we feel untouchable. But the reality of it is we are all fairly disposable. And at least in the social media world, like, we have to focus on our interpersonal relationships in real life, because that's where we are not interchangeable. Like, if I stop making work, the brands aren't going to care. 99% of my audience isn't going to even notice. Things come and go in this world, and often without ceremony. So, you know, it's a long haul, and I just want the folks that are green and fresh and have that good energy, like, save that, pace yourself, and stretch that out over 20 years instead of 10. Like, so.
Yeah. That was going to be my next question, was like, you know, the advice for the up and comers, but that's perfect, because I think, you know, in all creative outlets, right? It's not just art, you know, it's the same thing for me, more on the business side, and the, you know, the kind of managing and putting all these things together when I go and create like a brand for somebody, or, you know, social media, website, whatever it is, right? Like that feeling of like you're on top of the world because you're in it right now, and everybody's like, yeah, just get to the top, finish it, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, what next? Right?
Yeah,
like,
there's no finish line. We put these imaginary finish lines in our head. I'm gonna be all right if I can just get to this point. It's like, nah, bro.
Yep.
Like, there ain't no end. You don't know when that end's coming. Like,
yep.
So, yeah, it's wild. You know, you just hold on, and man, if you out there struggling, I feel you. I'm right there with you. So look, we in it together.
Definitely. So I guess to kind of wrap up, what let's I got two questions for you. Let's start with maybe your top 3 masks that you've done.
Okay.
But also I got to do like a top 3 sneakers of some kind.
Of course.
So
okay. Top 3 masks. The Red October Chilin. I love that fucking thing. The anglerfish. Yeah, I'm real proud of that one. We mentioned the King's Pride, and I can actually see my pair, and that's one of those as well. But I think the Travis Scott boar mask is probably one of my favorites now. There's so many though. There's so many. The top 3, yeah. Okay. Top 3 sneakers. Are we going models or like down to colorways?
I mean, you probably got the spoiler with the model behind you there. There's so many Air Max 90s.
It's 90s all day over here. So yeah, infrared 90s probably got to be my number 1, right? Design wise, I'm looking at all these, and I feel like they're yelling, pick me, pick me. Oh, I got to go my MF Doom SB Dunks. That, again, you know, we talked about hip hop, and that's a huge part of my collection, are my, the hip hop inspired sneakers, or collaborations. So as cliche as it is, I think my Net Yeezy ones would probably round that out as my number 3.
All right.
But honorable mention to my 500s, because I've had some foot problems lately, and that's the only pair that's like consistently comfortable with that Ortho Light insert. It's clutch for old man foot. So, yeah.
Nice. All right. So my last question: what's the next step? What's that next manifestation that you're putting out there? What's the big dream now that you're 10 years in?
Sure. Well, the big dream is a home and health insurance, man. It's getting to a point where I'm tired of living the starving artist lifestyle. Like,
yeah,
I don't regret a damn thing. I'm really happy and proud of everything I've accomplished, but, setting ego aside, there's more to it than being famous, and, being able to consistently and stably provide for myself and my family is way more of a priority than ever before. As far as the work goes, I mentioned the upcycling taxidermy with sneakers. So I definitely want to explore more of that, whether it be more of the mythological creatures that I come up with on my own, or, university mascots, would look great, I also, I'm gonna go ahead and say this, but it'll be a little Easter egg. I don't think it'll get too far out there. I've been working on these Pikachu sculptures out of used Jordan 3s, and I call them 3Kachu. If you're one of my Patreon subscribers, you've been able to get a look at these. It's on hold as far as the release, because I'm looking into maybe getting officially licensed. So, fingers crossed. And yeah, I can't wait to share the new work with you. So much in the works that, it's bursting at the seams.
Awesome, man. I'm looking forward to it. Any way I can help, as always, you got my number. I guess to wrap up, let's let everybody know how they can find you, where they can connect with you.
Yeah, no doubt.
Obviously the Patreon too, I'm in there, so I definitely suggest that. Get a cosign for me on that one too.
Yeah, join the apostles like Nick. It's a good crowd. So yeah, that's patreon.com/Freehand Profit. I'm at Freehand Profit on Instagram and Twitter, freehandprofit.com, and it's always FREEHANDPROFIT. And yeah, much love, Nick. Really appreciate you, and always great talking with you.
Of course, man. Thanks for coming on, and thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Be out.
Hey everyone, this is Nick again. Before you take off, I wanted to thank you for listening to the Sneaker History Podcast. We just launched our new merch, including tees, stickers, keychains, and a bunch of other pieces you can grab to show your support for the podcast. You can purchase it now through our companion site, sittingtreasure.com. You can also get access to more episodes of the podcast by joining our Discord community at patreon.com/sneakerhistory. Plus, we've got a bunch of other fun things going on in the community, including trivia nights, giveaways, access to sneaker raffles from around the world, release announcements, and just in general, good people helping good people get the sneakers they want. Plus, we're not bought by advertisers, investors, or other big money. I'm confident in saying that we are the best sneaker community for people truly passionate about sneakers. We've also teamed up with a few partners to offer our supporters access to exclusive discounts. You can find some of those in the links in the description for this episode, and even more in our Discord. Give us a try, and if you don't enjoy it, you can always cancel the membership at any time. As always, thank you for rocking with us, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Peace. Hey everyone, this is Nick again. Before you take off, do us a solid and head over to Apple Podcasts to leave us a review. Give us a rating on Spotify and Amazon Music, and make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel because we have even more video content coming soon. Speaking of new content, we have an amazing community of sneaker enthusiasts that hang out in our Sneaker History Discord on a daily basis. While sneakers is a connection point that brought us all together, we've all discovered countless shared passions that we have in common with each other. We recently launched a couple of new podcasts directly from our community. One of them is a Formula One podcast. If you're an F1 fan like me, the Exhaust Notes podcast is your weekly fix of Formula One fun. It's hosted by myself, Rohit Malhotra, and Todd Yates. New episodes drop every Tuesday. I've been wearing fitted hats for years and collecting my favorite teams since I was a little leaguer. It has been awesome to see so many new fans getting into fitteds in recent years. Crown and Stitch is our new talk show about fitted hats with Dexter, Keith, and myself, where we talk about fitted hats, snapbacks, throw in some obscure hats because we all kind of like some funky stuff once in a while, don't we? Copping, collecting, and so much more. New episodes drop every Wednesday. Hit the links in the show notes for this episode to give our new shows a listen, and be on the lookout for more new podcasts dropping soon. Last but not least, tell someone you like their kicks today. You never know how far a simple compliment can take you, and we all know how good it feels to have someone show their appreciation. Thank you all for the support, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.